Hello and welcome to the Unusual Stories podcast. My name is Wojciech Salski, I'll be your host for today. And as per usual, before we start, may I just remind you, if you find this podcast useful, entertaining, interesting, and you'd like to see more of it, and you'd like to support me, then the best way would probably be to support by clicking the follow button or the subscribe button and sharing it with a friend. You know, the word of mouth is like the best marketing there is, and it's also free. And then, obviously, if you'd like to support me in any other way, maybe by sending me an email, just giving me a pat on the back, suggesting a book to read or review, or if you'd like to support me financially, then please follow the link below. Everything is there. And I'm very keen always to hear what you guys have to say and how is it going on your side in regards to this audible endeavor that I have here. As you can hear, my voice is still not exactly there, so pardon me for that. And as well, I just wanted to mention I've managed to get my neighbor to stop the banging for a moment. I think we have something around an hour, but I cannot promise that there won't be any sounds throughout the recording. This is mostly due to the fact that they are having a big refurb of his flat, and he did say that they're not going to be banging against this wall, but it's not obvious for me that he's not going to be banging against another wall somewhere else. So just please forgive me if there is some sort of a sound nuisance, and I hope that doesn't really affect the quality of this recording. So, that's life, eh? That's how it is. So we might as well give it a start. I'm quite excited about today, mostly due to the fact that I feel this yet another book by David Hawkins might be exactly what we need to sort of wrap up the season. This is the 9th episode, so I'm going to prepare one more. I don't know yet which book I'm going to review for you next week. I'm sort of torn between two ideas, and I'll see what happens. But for today, I've prepared for you the book called The Eye of the I. So The Eye of the I by David Hawkins. And this is a follow-up sort of on Power versus Force. Even in the book itself, on the sort of acknowledgements and preface, the author explains that it's a continuation of the ideas shared in the previous book. And if you've had a chance already to look online on the different books produced by David Hawkins, you will see that there is a certain rhythm to them. And obviously, I'm not going to be reviewing all of them. Maybe over time, I will get back to some more. But for the time being, it seems to me that these are the best places to start and to sort of allow your mind and soul to get boggled slightly about these different ideas, while not overwhelming the whole season with writings from the same teacher, really. And I think there is a certain value in giving you an array of works to work with. So, as I said, this is a continuation of thoughts from Power versus Force. The one major difference that you will note straight away if you buy the book in a paper form, or if you look through the chapters on your Audible or whatever other form you're going to be exploring it, is that there is a major section of Q&As. And it is in a format of a Q&A in a way that you have, I think, somewhere around 50%, 60% maybe of the text being chapter by chapter textual storytelling as per usual, and then you have the remaining 40% or so of just straightforward Q&As divided into themes, I guess. And I found it quite useful, quite entertaining. So I'll get back to that later in the episode. But for the time being, for context, the idea of the book itself is that as you've explored power versus force, and as you've sort of started exploring the different ideas among the chapters there, you will be able to enhance your understanding by reading this one. And also later on, you might find some answers to your potential questions, since the author is no longer with us. And obviously, even if they were, it's not so easy to attend every event that authors put on, right? So, for example, myself, I'm very keen to participate in one of the presentations or sort of one of the events on the next tour for Jordan Peterson. I'd really like to see him live before, he maybe retires from public speaking. And that doesn't mean I wouldn't appreciate some sort of Q&A section in his own book, since I might not be able to ask the question I want to ask. So I found it quite useful, this one. So let's start. First of all, an interesting thing to maybe note, and this is a theme that goes through all the works by David Hawkins, and you might remember it from our episode about the Letting Go book. The idea is that basically each of us is on a certain level of consciousness, right? We calibrate on one of those levels. You're most likely you're on the courage level or just below it, maybe, depending on your state of mind. And this is according to Hawkins's research in terms of where people calibrate in general, and the likelihood is quite high that you're somewhere around that courage level, mostly for the fact that you are willing to explore new ideas. The mere fact that you are right now listening to a random guy talking about some ideas that might feel outlandish to some means that you are on an open-minded level, and courage is the first the lowest of the open-minded levels there are. So, as I mentioned earlier, I sort of feel that I oscillate from time to time on the pride, sometimes anger, and I hope often enough on the courage level myself, and I can imagine you to be quite similar. So the idea, the interesting idea to note is that just by which is not so mere, but just by interacting with high consciousness level books or high consciousness level art or music, we can enhance and sort of tune into these levels, right? So David Hawkins states in his book in Letting Go and also in The Eye of the Eye that even just because you're reading this, you're already dwelling in a higher level. And this doesn't mean that you're suddenly going to get enlightened and that's it. As we've mentioned earlier, it's highly unlikely you ever will. And you're more likely to just enhance your own perspective and maybe help yourself in your own life, which is, I guess, the point of self-development and taking care of oneself. But at least you will be able to dwell in higher level ideas. And as we've mentioned earlier, if you remember, because each idea, each thought, each activity, each person, each event has a certain level of consciousness. For example, if you're reading a book such as Mein Kampf by Hitler, you're likely to be engaging with energies that are rather low, and these energies will interact with your energies. So I would say it sounds reasonable enough to me, I hope it does to you as well, that if you surround yourself with low frequency ideas, thought patterns and experiences, you will be affected by these. In a similar way as we've discussed before, that if you have this kind of maybe friend or a colleague that whenever you meet them, you feel after the meeting like you've been sucked out of your energy. Maybe they are a bit of an energy vampire, as people call them. So, they have a lot of negative energy. They dump a lot of problems onto you, and basically you finish the meeting feeling like, oh my god, you kind of feel emotionally or energetically raped, abused in a way, then that's probably an indicator that you've allowed these lower frequency energies to affect you. And this is also a reason why you should probably not hang around too much around people or spend time dwelling on ideas or watching movies or listening to music that takes you down. Because ultimately, if you are interested and encouraged to take care of your energy, then you should surround yourself and be with ideas, thoughts, people, feelings that pick you up rather than put you down. And so the idea here is that even by reading the book, you're already dwelling in a higher level state. And similarly, if you decide to, for example, read a beautiful piece of art like something from Shakespeare, or if you want to enjoy music by Mozart, or you want to look at art that was created by Michelangelo, whatever, these are all high consciousness level works, and so they pick you up, they fill your soul, and they allow you to engage with higher frequency experiences. And I've then taken quite a few quotes here for you today to dwell on and to also explore. So let's start with this one. We change the world not by what we say or do, but by what we become. We change the world not by what we say or do, but by what we become. And this is something that we've explored on the podcast again and again quite frequently, that Emerson said, for example, that you become what you think about most of the time, right? And then if you think about yourself as this energetic field, and you have a certain frequency, as we've explored, then depending on your frequency, you will resonate with certain frequency. And so you become a certain magnet to the emotions or states that you are inside yourself feeling. And this is this idea of the mirror, right? Like we've explored 2 weeks ago, that we see what we believe and we accept what we ourselves are. So if you think the world is filled with anger and fear and anxiety, then you're more likely to find those aspects of life around you throughout the day than if you're, for example, a person who really believes everyone and everything is kind. Then you're much more likely to find reasons to believe that, because we have this confirmation bias and this filter at play, which allows us to see what we're looking for. And so Confucius, for example, said, apparently, he who says he can and he who says he can't are both usually right. And I found that profoundly impactful on me when I was younger. I remember I learned that quote, I think when I was 16 or 17, and I remember it made a huge impact on me, because it allowed me to think of myself more by assuming that by working more on myself and by thinking more of myself, I can actually become more and attract more. And this is something that recurs again and again. In the Bible, you have he who reaps, he who sow must reap, right? You reap what you sow. This idea that you plant seeds in the world and you gain the benefits of those seeds by doing the work, by basically getting what you're looking for. You ask and you receive, you knock, and the door will be opened upon you. So the emphasis here is placed on the idea that we become ourselves different, and therefore the world changes for us. And if you remember the quote from Einstein, who said that the world as we know it is the result of our thinking, change your thinking and you will change your world. Now, this is even taking it a bit further up and saying, decide how you see the world, and the world will reveal to you itself the way you see it. And we'll explore that in a second in terms of the objective and subjective truths, if there are any. But for now, think about it this way. Where you are today, according to David Hawkins, according to his book, The Eye of the I, where you are today, right now, right this moment, whatever you're doing, however you're looking, whoever you're meeting, whatever, everything about your life is a reflection, it's a manifestation of the spiritual energy that you hold, your spiritual energy. And the idea here is that from spiritual unmanifested, from the sea of consciousness out there, comes the physical manifestation. So, and this is a very radical idea, which I found profoundly interesting, that even the fact the way you were born, to whom you were born as a child, where you were born, and at which point in time, remembering that time does not exist in the sort of non-physical plane, this is all related to your spiritual karmic experience. And so, you may think of it as you wish. You can discard it as an idea that doesn't resonate with you, and that's completely fine. For me, it feels right to explore it in this way. And David Hawkins says, because you can become aware that whatever is happening in your life is as it is, and if you allow yourself to accept it as true, that's when the humility and the acceptance of yourself comes into play, and that's when you become more at peace with the world, with yourself, with everything. And I find this idea quite profound and empowering. So think about it. Were me, Wojtek, at least me, Wojtek, like this, this bodysuit and this name, and this mind, where I am right now in my life, if it is truly a full-blown reflection of where my spiritual energy and my karma aligns, then not only can I accept myself with all my flaws from the past and recognize that these were necessary for me to be here, but I can also recognize that by becoming more kind, more loving, more aware, and less sort of ego-driven tense, I can change my life for the better towards the future, if you believe that these ideas are true. Because this is the free will that David Hawkins refers to. The free will we have is the will, the ability to make a choice. And every time you make a choice, you give into this astral plane or spiritual plane, whatever you want to call it, a certain energy that brings back to you whatever you've planted. And so you choose at every moment, all the time throughout your life, what you want to bring forth. What do you want to manifest? Now, a quote here for you is, humility allows us to appreciate that we may not know what or why did things occur as they did. Acceptance of everything just as it is the ultimate humility. And so not only do we get an empowerment from understanding that we can change our world by changing ourselves, by becoming more, by becoming better, and we also have a fair enough blueprint to do so, just by recognizing what are the good qualities versus the bad qualities and what do we want to see in life, but also by becoming humble, by recognizing that I am what I am with all my restrictions right now, with all my limitations, and that is okay. This radical acceptance can allow us to feel more at peace, I would say, and also accept others more, because it goes hand in hand, right? The moment I realize all my problems of today are relevant to my own spiritual blueprint that I've worked on and am constantly working on, I can also see others and recognize that all they're going through, and maybe all the negative energy as well that I can pick up from them, is okay, and it's not their fault, it's not their, of their making in a way, but it is also not bad that it is so. It's just, this is their blueprint manifested, and they are going through their own experience, they're going down their own path. And at this point, let me just take a sip of coffee. Now at this point, I don't know what you think about the idea of having some drink during the show. I found recently that I should probably have something at hand because my throat might be giving up a little bit. Now, at this point, I want to tell you a little story about yesterday. My girlfriend is visiting, and which is amazing, which is lovely. And yesterday we went for a walk around Edinburgh, and we stumbled upon these guys with a whiteboard. And the question on the whiteboard was something like, do you think there are evil spiritual forces in the world or whatever? And Julia, in her wisdom, pointed the finger at that and said that I should probably reflect upon it. So I ticked the box saying I do think there are some evil forces, or like I can imagine them to be. And so one guy approached me and started chatting with me, and I'm not sure, he was definitely from a Christian related group, but he didn't really specify throughout our conversation what denomination or what group he was. I'm not sure if it was Jehovah's Witness or if it was some small group of local Roman Catholics. I'm not so sure. Which was one of the confusing facts about this whole interaction, that I was surprised that he didn't want to share with me what his club, let's say, is, because I find that quite useful, right? And like, if I want to look you up online and maybe, and if I am interested, then surely you should share with me your logo, your club name. But it was really interesting. The funny thing is, obviously, Julia did not expect that I'll end up talking with the guy for 40 minutes, and maybe to a degree, the conversation could have finished a bit earlier, because at some point I feel like he's been going in circles. But it is quite interesting, especially with my interests and with these books, with this book even that I literally have been reading for the past few days. It was all very fresh, and so I'm keen to discuss these topics. I find them fascinating. As long as the conversation is respectful, and as long as I don't feel the person is really trying to push me in the corner and like kind of stuff their ideas down my throat, then I'm really keen to discuss these. I enjoy the conversation and the debate. And so we discussed the different ideas. I sort of answered the question with a question. We went back and forth. And some thoughts that came into mind literally as, in respect to what we've just said. This idea, for example, that we see what we believe, and accept what we ourselves are. I think that's like, it was very evident throughout our conversation with him that there were some ideas that he didn't really want to go into because they were not in line with his teaching, whatever. I in a way, we were laughing later with Julia that maybe it would be easier for him if I didn't enjoy and if I wasn't interested in these ideas, because I didn't actually make for an easy listener. I was rather a discussion partner. I wasn't taking in what he said just at face value. Rather, we were going back and forth. I found this quite interesting, and I hope that for him it was also interesting. And I truly do hope that he did look up David Hawkins, because I said at some point that the majority of my perspective on this comes from his writings, and that they are not against, rather they are in line with the spiritual teachings of many other religions. But he didn't really like the idea that there are different religions that might also be true. And this is the whole point here. I think there is a certain level of the open versus closed mind discussion whenever the differences in religion is what you emphasize. So I asked him at some point, because he said that the only way to save yourself is to follow Jesus Christ. And while I don't mind the idea of following Jesus' teachings as the way, I certainly don't think it's the only one. And so I said, well, isn't it exactly the difference that you're posing versus someone else from a different religion might pose that is sort of the essence of the conflict between people? Because if we end up arguing about these ideas that might help every one of us, instead of coming together under one fairly unanimous agreement that, for example, all life is equal and valuable, and just leaving it at that, wouldn't it be easier and better for the world? Especially that his whole idea was that we're trying to become better and therefore the world will be better. And I said, yeah, fair enough, that sounds about right. But the moment you want to bring me to your club and you say any other club is wrong, then even just by that, you're, sort of alienating and aggravating quite a few people out there who might not agree with you as the only right way. And I truly do believe that a big part of solving problems for the world in terms of, conflicts, in terms of turbulations and troubles we have, is to first and foremost accept that people will have different ideas. The most important thing is what we do about them. And you can't truly live a fulfilling and a peaceful life with one another while having different ideas of what life is. I have friends from all over the world, and I have friends from all kinds of beliefs. It doesn't make it harder for me to have quality time with them and to agree on some ways of doing things. The fact that they believe a certain different God name, for example. And so this closing of your mind to others because their idea is not exactly yours, I find quite problematic. And maybe this is where the acceptance that everything is just as it should be, as the ultimate humility, plays a part in our discourse. And we've talked about this bias, right? We see what we believe and accept what we ourselves are. He was really keen to hear that I came from Catholic background, but he was not so happy about the idea that I have this book or this author that I suggest he also explores, even though I've explored the Bible. He was very happy that I'm keen to explore the Bible, but he wasn't so happy about the fact that I suggest some ideas and books to him as well. So it was a sort of a one-way street. And this idea, I guess here, before we go to the objective versus subjective truth, the point what I'm trying to make with this story is that if at any point your discussion or your contemplation of a topic becomes a one-way street of convincing someone of the fact that you are right, then you're probably already below this 200 mark level of courage and open mind. Because, according to Hawkins, at least, according to his teachings and his writings, there is no right or wrong other than those universal truths we all recognize and we innately know. For example, don't kill, don't steal, don't hurt another person, do unto others as you would want to be done upon. And there cannot be much conversation if one person is just trying to convince the other and that's it. So, my invitation to you, as to myself, is remember to check yourself whenever you feel like your conversation turns into this you preaching or teaching the other against their will. It's a different story if they ask you about it. Don't get me wrong, sometimes a friend of mine will ask me something and they really want to hear my point of view, and that's great. But unsolicited advice is definitely not something we should strive for. And it has much more pride inside it than courage at the end of the day. So now about the objective truth, and this is the interesting one, right? So this is later in the book, and I would definitely recommend you reading it so you can reflect upon it more than what I'll share here. But this troubled me in a way. This idea troubled me in a way, but also made me a bit more encouraged, maybe, that what I'm doing is right as well, in terms of sharing these ideas and not really giving you the answer in many ways. I don't know. So I'll read the quote first and then I'll reflect on it. So the quote goes something like, "There is no objective truth, as even if there was, it would be only possible to be discovered through subjective experience, which will therefore make it subjective to that which it experiences as true." And David Hawkins says that accepting that there is no objective truth is the first step to exploration and growth in the consciousness and your self-consciousness sort of levels, path, empowerment. And now this is radical. Let me say this again. There is no objective truth. And the way Hawkins describes it is all you experience, all I experience, all a horse experiences on the field, all a tree experiences in the forest, it is only experienced from their perspective in their own way. The way I experience a snake is not how snake experiences me and how snake experiences itself. In the same way I experience you is not the way you experience yourself or you experience yourself through me. So we've talked about it earlier in the podcast. I don't remember which episode, that there is a difference, for example, in how I think you think about me versus how you think about me versus how you think I think about you thinking about me. Now, this is a mind-boggling idea in itself, but isn't it true that a big part of the conflict we face in the world is surrounding this idea that there is one objective truth? There is one objectively true God, or there is one objectively true and right way of arranging, governing a country, or maybe there is an objective truth of how you should raise a family, or what does it mean to be XYZ. And this, the argument about the objective truth, about the facts, about what happened, about the way the universe was made, all of these can be very, very aggravating and very contentious to groups of people. it seems to me that maybe this is exactly the root of all really potentially, heartbreaking and difficult problems of the world itself. We tend to disagree on those things, and everyone seems to know what the real truth is, and we disregard others' truth as not true, and therefore we fight them to prove the point that we know what they don't. Now, if we bring into this world the idea that there is no objective truth, and that everything that happens, everything that you experience, everything that everyone else experiences, everything that the world experiences is ultimately subjective, if we agree on that, then at least we can start having a conversation that is more about describing what you felt, describing what you saw, describing what you've experienced, rather than disagreeing on whatever someone else did experience, saw, or feel. Now, this is radical, right? Think about it. If you come to me and you say that you feel a bit upset about the situation we've had yesterday, we've had some argument, and you're upset with my behavior, the one option is I disagree with you, I say I'm upset with the way you acted, and then we start arguing about what happened. And my perception of what happened is different than your perception of what happened, but because we disregard one another, I say, no, I'm right, my perception of what happened is true, therefore you're lying and you're seeing it wrong. There is no way I will be able to understand how you feel, and I don't even give myself or yourself a chance to put the conflict on the side while we try to solve to find the solution to the problem. It is a very different way of thinking that if I assume from the beginning that what you felt and what you saw is true for you, and you assume from the beginning that what I saw and what I felt is true for me, and therefore both of us are right, and we're just trying to find a way how can we make this not happen again in a way that will be upsetting to us both. It is a very different narrative. One makes us enemies, and sort of it poses us against one another, because if I agree that you're right, then I am wrong, and if you agree that I am right, then you are wrong. And the other assumes we are both right, we just don't see eye to eye, and now we can come together as a team and solve the problem, because we don't want this to happen again, because we both felt upset. And I think this is a huge, and of a potential huge impact idea for the world and for us. And I would encourage you to consider this, like really contemplate this idea that there is no objective truth. Hawkins puts in his book, in the Q&A section, someone asked the question like, how come? There might be an objective truth out there, like there is another, universe or whatever, and we just don't know about it. The thing is, though, according to Hawkins, the only way for us to appreciate that universe to be somewhere as an objectively true universe is if there is something to experience it as a universe. If there is at least one rock or one, particle that is experiencing it to be true, that there is another universe, then that other universe yet again becomes subjectively experienced. And it doesn't mean that it's not objectively there, but the mere need of something experiencing it for it to be proven to be true means that there is no objective truth. There is only loads of subjective truths that allow us to maybe see a bigger, subjectively perceived, truthful picture. And instead of coming together in unison to describe what we experience, if we argue about the objective truth, we miss the point of collaboration and we change it into a conflict-prone narrative. And I think this is quite a powerful thought to have, and maybe an invitation as well for you to consider this as a way of going about your life. Think about it. Anytime you are in disagreement with another, if you assume that what they are saying and what they are doing is true to them, and instead of trying to push against that, you try and find a solution that works for the both of you, it might be much easier to deal with this argument. Of course, this doesn't solve the major problems in the world. This doesn't solve the crimes and awful deeds that people do or wars that happen. But at least I think it gives us a space in our personal life to avoid unnecessary conflicts in the spaces where there could be collaboration and understanding. And ultimately, if we come back to this idea that we change the world not by what we say or do, but by what we become, then we should always turn the mirror at ourselves in those moments of trouble and try to figure out a way how we can become better, rather than sort of, impose on others how they should do what they should do and have and say, instead of working through it ourselves. And I find this quite a profound idea. So I wanted to leave that to you. And in terms of my final sort of point before I invite you for 2 ideas in the future, in your week to do, is, as I said earlier, this Q&A section of the book, which is very big. It has chapters upon chapters. I found it very practical and useful, especially in explaining ideas that you might have already explored, but you don't exactly grasp them. Some questions are very detailed and lengthy, and some are quite straightforward. For example, there is a question that literally goes to say, but what did you mean by that? What did you mean by this? By why is that? And then final question is like, and how do I know you're telling the truth or whatever? So I would encourage you to read this book after you've explored Power versus Force. I think it is for a reason that Power versus Force is noted to be the previous, the first, and then this one being the second in line to be explored. And I just wanted to, remind you, the idea is that even by reading these books and other powerful books and, exploring powerful ideas, high frequency ideas, you can change your state of mind and you can empower yourself to be better. And so even just for that, it might be worth reading it and seeing how it affects you. Maybe you'll have a similar experience to what I did experience with the first book I read by Hawkins, which was Letting Go. And here I am, 5 years later, still talking about these ideas and still dwelling upon them, still reading them. And I do truly believe they have helped me. And so hopefully they can help you. Now, the 2 invitations I have for you this week. And I did choose 2 because I couldn't decide which one's better. So it's up to you. You can pick up both of them or you can just choose one. So there is a part in the book that talks about meditation. And we've talked about it before. If you remember, the idea about being mindful is not only limited to these 10 minutes a day in the morning that you do. Rather, if you want to become as mindful as you can, then you should strive to be mindful of your state at all times. And the practice that Hawkins offers as one of the better ones, more efficient in his opinion to choose from, is the practice of self-inquiry. So you constantly ask yourself throughout the day, who is it that is the doing? Who is it that is doing the thinking? Who is it that is experiencing all these things? So it's a meditation on, or a contemplation on who inside you, which eye of the I is observing and who is the one doing. So for example, when you find yourself being irritated, who is it that is the irritated? Where do you feel that irritation? Or when you're doing something, who is it that is doing the doing? And I know it sounds rather confusing maybe at first, but it might be worth trying it out. I've been trying it out for a while, and it's interesting. Not always do I find it easy, but I find it quite interesting, right? So the whole point, I guess, of our explorations here is to maybe experiment with interesting ideas and face your fears in many ways. So this is the first invitation for you throughout the week. Try to ask yourself again and again, maybe write it on your hand as a reminder or whatever. Who is it that is doing the doing? Who is the thinking? Who is experiencing? And maybe who is observing? Because this is also a big part of some of the meditation techniques, that you try to note who is it inside that is seeing the thoughts, the thinking thoughts. Who is the observer? Where is the observer where is this awareness that is constantly observing what is going on in your life? Now, secondly, the second invitation is to choose one quality, one simple quality that we've explored as the high qualities, maybe lovingness, kindness, acceptance, humility, and practice it with everything and everyone and every time throughout your day. And try to do it throughout your day, week, month, year. And this is one practice that David Hawkins suggests that is the easiest, the fastest way of progressing on your sort of enlightenment path of becoming better. So by treating yourself with kindness, by treating others with kindness, by treating your thoughts with kindness, by treating everything, everyone, everywhere with kindness, you can radically change your state, and you can see how it changes the way the world reacts to you. And I think, in terms of just being on a day-to-day basis, I bet you can see the difference when you have a good day and you treat others with respect versus if you woke up the wrong way and you go about your day all day moping around. There is a different energy about you, and so you get different responses from people. And the idea here is that you choose one high quality, one high frequency quality, and you go with it for everything, through everything, everywhere, all at once. And so maybe that is the activity you'd like to explore throughout your week and day or month even. So yeah, other than that, I hope that you're gonna have a blessed and a wonderful week. As I said, if you'd like to support the podcast, then please do follow the link below. And I appreciate your time. And luckily there wasn't much bumping against the walls, I guess. So that's wonderful. So this probably settles it. I'll probably have another week worth of book reviews for you this season. And then I have something special prepared for a sort of intermission. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week once again. Stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.